Hi, so this is Mark Hill from Hebden Bridge, convener of Green Leaves, which is a body of Green Party members and supporters who are calling for a leave vote at the forthcoming Euro referendum. The question at this referendum is whether or not we are going to be ruled by the European Union, no more, no less. And we approach this question from a specifically green point of view. Now, few in our part of the political spectrum really understand that the European Union over the past decade or so has essentially become a state. It is a body with a constitution, a judiciary, a Supreme Court, lawyers, a court of auditors, an equivalent to the Home Office Minister, a diplomatic corps, a national anthem, Ode to Joy, a central bank, a single currency, a statistical service, a civil service, the Commission, a president, a body of law, the law-making chamber, and then at the end, us, its citizens. Many countries are recognised as countries by the United Nations despite not having all of these. The UK government in 1975 promised that this sort of state building wouldn't happen, but of course it has. Many on the left of centre in British politics still consider that the European Union is some sort of collective of nation states, national governments negotiating with each other. But that is not the case. Its farming and trade focus is no longer its main interest. Do not kid yourself. The European Union is about a super state which already imposes laws and its policies on our elected parliament without democratic recourse. This referendum is also an election. It is an election for the European Union's main body, which is called the Commission. The European Union has 28 commissioners, some of them for functions that you might expect, such as fisheries, trade, migration, enlargement, the internal market, and its main expenditure budget, agriculture. But it also has commissions for ministries that you might not have realised have become European Union functions. These include health, education, employment, international aid, digital economy, foreign affairs, and the energy union. The Commission now expects to set the strategy for these most mainstream of United Kingdom government services. So in addition to the minor policies, the relatively minor policies of agriculture and the single currency, where its past failures are already so clear, the European Union expects to increasingly expand into the role fulfilled by our Parliament and our elected government. If you accept that this European Union is a state, then this is surely the only election that you will ever get for its commissioners. As I said, there are 28 of them, each with a basic pay which is considerably in excess what we pay our UK Prime Minister, but with sizable fringe benefits, with extra expense allowances for matters such as entertainment and residence. They get golden hellos when they are appointed, considerable benefits after they retire, and of course a gold-plated pension scheme. Consider, for example, Ms. Cecilia Malmstrom, who is, as the Trade Commissioner, is somewhat in the eye at the moment. She is completely unelected, unaccountable to party, nation, opposition, media or electorate. She will get paid whatever she negotiates and agrees in trade policy on our collective behalves. And we are talking about behalves of 500 million people now collectively. A body, an electorate which is beyond all meaning because it is so large. These commissioners have, amongst other things, secretly negotiated trade agreements which now set laws and policies in stone above their own heads and the heads of commissioners that might be nominated and appointed after them. These are called, for example, standstill clauses in agreements such as the TTIP. The commissioners who want you to vote stay are proud of what they have done. Together they think of themselves as visionaries. Search YouTube for the words Barroso and empire, and you will see, for example, how hubristically they consider their role in this empire of the European continent. Now, many in this wider movement of which Greens are a part view the European Union with blue and gold star spectacles. Greens are utopian. We hope for a better world internationally, but some are convinced that they can see this utopia specifically in that part of Western Europe that is ruled by Brussels. Such is the level of dissolution with the slow rate of progress of the British Labour and Conservative parties and the governments that they run, that some simply like the euphoric feeling of dealing with an entirely different and new authority. They are willing to commit to the cause of Eurofederalism without thinking through the consequences. Some Greens look past the fact that it is the largest banks and multinational companies that are spending the most time and money in Brussels lobbying to secure laws and policies which suit their interests. They also forget that it is the multinationals and the largest banks that call for a stay vote, that finance the stay campaign, and want the British people to agree to become subject to the laws that they have lobbied for in Brussels. Some Greens like to think of the European Union as a better place, which must be internationalist simply because it is international. They ignore the protectionism, the dumping on the third world, the subjugation of national governments, the corporatism. They ignore the huge peril of rule from Brussels, that we voters cannot alter its laws, its policies, its trade agreements through electoral change. Now, thinking stayers amongst the left and the Greens realise this problem and therefore call for more democracy. But think about what this would practically mean. More electoral accountability to a wide, Euro-wide electorate means European-wide political parties trying to work across the entire continent, from Ireland to the Ukraine, from Turkey to Sweden, or from Cyprus to the Isle of Gibraltar. On what mandate would the sort of people elected by these political parties actually serve? What meaning would there be to a European Union president that was so elected? Does anybody in Europe really have any sort of passion for this sort of level of political amalgamation? Could, for example, an additional member voting system as part of a Euro-wide proportional representation electorate actually be conducted on a continent-wide basis? Who would feel any sort of commitment to the representatives that have been so elected? More binding democracy at the EU-wide level means more qualified majority voting. That means one nation often being outvoted by a majority of the others. Is this what you think of when you think of the word democracy? Does this word empire used by our opponents really appeal to you? The key to this dilemma, as with so many other social and environmental dilemmas, is simply one of scale. Greens have always been suspicious of bodies that are so large that they are beyond popular control. We're a decentralist movement, which is why you hear phrases in the Green Party's policies such as "nothing should be decided at a higher level if it can be decided at a lower one." This is why many Green supporters have never felt comfortable as citizens of a body that has ever closer union as its core aim, whether or not we in Britain sign up to that. We have more faith in natural processes of the whole world than we have in the large-scale man-made enterprises that seek to change the world. Scale often allows problems to get beyond repair. Bigger is not better. Under the huge trade agreements and under the authority of the Leviathan European Union, injustice is now being made law. British government agencies like local authorities and the National Health Service can now be sued in special trade courts if their policies are deemed to discriminate against the interests of multinational companies. The Green answer is therefore obvious. Simply head in the opposite direction. Rather than try and solve the interminable dislocations caused by over-centralisation, simply decentralise. Replace empire with dialogue between governments. Trade policy is not actually that difficult. We can only ever have Brussels technocrats negotiate this stuff on our behalf internationally, in secret. Look at the movement behind Bernie Sanders at present and you'll see that real citizen involvement with international issues is possible. Trade policy has now become a talking point for millions in the USA, especially as he correctly describes it as corporate rule. And the United States left has coalesced around a candidate that is standing for a Democratic presidency, a candidate that is going to take a post that is powerful enough to renegotiate their country's trade stance with all other countries. Meanwhile, our United Kingdom Parliament cannot renegotiate any terms in a treaty that has been agreed by the European Union Commissioner, Cecilia Malmström. If the referendum is a success, then Greenleaf's demands that the Commons be empowered to discuss the text of UK trade agreements openly. Thus, for the first time in 40 years, the issues that are being set by TTIP and other international trade agreements would be made public. Future trade rules should be decided by Parliament with the transparency of Commons inquiries and Commons voting. And then if new trade treaties are agreed but go wrong, we can be very sure whom to blame, whom we need to dismiss. Those MPs that decided to vote aye in the mother of parliaments. Greens and Left voters should express their opposition to corporate rule by opposing the commissioners that are responsible. So when the referendum comes, don't just vote for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. Vote against Cecilia